school year is stressful enough, even more so during a global.
Children are resilient, but the isolation many are feeling is causing a very significant.
Our kids are really struggling with anxiety and depression.
As a result, our mental and emotional well-being has really suffered. How are you doing? What do you need? Do you feel safe?
Yes, projects like this, it all starts kind of with the creative narrative. They want to, in this case, they wanted to tell the story of just the different kind of continual social, physical, mental traumas that were just taking place. And then you throw, COVID and quarantine on top of that. They just wanted to do, they came to us with a desire to show to get imagery and video that would kind of show this buildup, this kind of weight that was ever increasing on, teens and children. We kind of take that kind of request and then we go into kind of two areas. There's maybe some library archival footage, stock footage that will work, but then also real footage of real people who are advocates for mental health, who are trying to, shine a light on it. This one girl was, made a little film of her texting her friends saying, I just don't feel well. I just don't want to do it. And then, her friends coming back and saying, hey, it's okay. And just like showing like, it's okay to reach out. It's okay to display yourself as you are, even if you're not happy, even if you're having a bad time, because how else are you going to get help? So a lot of it's just, getting into, independent footage that people have filmed for the purposes of bringing awareness to, I'm trying to look in the camera too, for bringing awareness to mental health issues, in particular in kids who are often overlooked because they're seen as so resilient and they can take it. And then, mom and dad are busy and teachers are overstressed. Everyone else is overburdened in a way that makes them even less observant of children in these predicaments. We knew we were going to kind of have this narrative. That's what all these projects kind of start with, that like, this is a story we want to tell. How can we show this? How can we show this happening? And so we did it kind of in two ways. One is to find real world footage of people actually bringing awareness. One of the films we pulled from was a film that was actually created to highlight bullying and other things that going on. And it was just really powerful stuff. And we had, reach out and make contact and get clearance for use of people's likeness and things like that. And then once we kind of have a good amount of visual support for that narrative of what they're trying to say, then we go and find reinforcing images, in stock libraries where we can basically, support what's kind of, going on with the other existing footage that we found in the way of visuals. I'm just kind of scrolling through the three spots that we made for that campaign. The clock ticking down, the pressure building up, all the different ways that they can find to be disruptive to themselves, be disruptive to others, and just, how readily available that information is to the average youth. It was an interesting combination of kind of found footage in the realm of independent and like stock, and then you have this constant kind of evolving narrative where they're trying to they're trying to tell their story, and you're kind of you're just giving them the building blocks along the way to further flesh out their narrative, which then gets reinforced with more imagery as you have a more concrete understanding of how the narrative is going. Oh yeah, I think, I think the common colloquialism we have is found footage storytelling. And that's really what it is. I mean, if you have a story to tell, there's footage out there that exists that can help you tell it. It may not be footage that was necessarily shot in the context of your narrative, but a visual aid is a visual aid. So, things shot for purpose are interesting, or shot for topic, and they can be really useful. But then a lot of the smoothing out and the filling in of the cracks of a narrative comes from just an absolute mind-boggling plethora of video and stills that are just out there, you know. So yeah, it's amazing that you can weave more intricate and accurate tapestries with a higher resolution that pays mind to the narrative than you ever could before. It's just amazing how much more niche something can be we're looking for and still find it. So yeah, it's pretty neat. This kind of found footage storytelling really wasn't possible 10 years ago, or was much more difficult, would require a lot more research. Now between, you know, a few big digital libraries and a couple independent you know, creators, you can just make these amazing visual stories. So yeah, I think you know, found footage is extremely powerful, not because of its own innate nature, but just for the fact that there's so much of it and such a variety that you can arrange the notes how you need to make your song. And I think that's really neat. I think it's just a great tool, and it's very accessible to filmmakers that don't have a lot of money to do big crews and big shoots and put people on planes. You know, they can have a narrative, they can pull a few powerful pieces of footage and then build around that and kind of cobble in with existing footage, you know, in major digital collections. And again, it's so vast and varied. It's very odd we look for something we cannot find. And if it's not in the digital libraries, then I guarantee it exists somewhere on YouTube or TikTok. Like, you know, existing footage is just a huge pull, and it's very useful for these types of projects, especially these projects that don't have a lot of money to spend on directors and cameras and crew and things like that. So it's a very important logistical element for visual storytelling. That makes a lot of stories being able to told now that you would not have been able to tell 10 years ago for the same price, or maybe even at all. Yeah, I think, you know, making footage commercially viable, you know, takes a few extra steps, a little bit more due diligence, in particular in areas of likeness release. You know, when a human being is shown in a piece of footage, and then that piece of footage is going to be used commercially, you need that person's permission. So I think, you know, permissions from people whose faces and emotions and life is going to be on screen, that's probably the most important part of really making a piece of footage commercially applicable. A lot of the stuff in the libraries, if it's a clock ticking down or somebody, you know, on their cell phone, you know, a lot of that stuff may just be released and ready to go. But a lot of the more powerful stuff, especially stuff that's from real people that had filmed something that was really in topic, you know, to make that commercial ready, yeah, it's a bit more connectivity that has to happen. You have to be in touch with the filmmaker. They have to be in touch with all primary and secondary elements of talent so that you can secure likeness release and make sure permissions are all around. These more difficult projects too, you know, not only do you need to seek the rights and permissions needed, but you also need to have sometimes difficult discussions about the narrative that you are trying to put out there. And then you have to not have to hear their story, but you get to hear some people's stories, some contributor stories too. And so there's a bit of an emotional weight that comes with projects like this. You know, when we did, you know, videos about, you know, anti-gun violence and other things like that, I mean, you're reaching out to people either in advocacy or who are victims, who are suffering through these things. So there's a bit of an emotional clearance that you have to go through to then attain the likeness and copyright clearances, in some case trademark or property clearances necessary to then make a piece fully ready for commercial use. So yeah, we like these powerful messages, and it's nice when they're like PSA docu runs, because the rights and limitations are less intense. But when you want to run a full commercial piece, yeah, it's more difficult, but doable. I think working on these commercials, like for like Sandy Hook or anti-gun violence, like things in this range of, you know, let's not let our kids go to pot. I think professionally, I was not really surprised, but I guess pleasantly surprised by, you know, we always think going into this, oh, people aren't going to want to talk about this, they ain't going to work with us. And then it's the complete opposite. And people are very open and be like, yes, please use my footage. This is exactly why it's there. You know, thank you for helping me get my message out there. So well, I'm always taken a little bit aback, because a lot of times if you're making something for, you know, Gatorade or Facebook or, you know, some big company, Cisco, and you're like, hey, we want to use a video of, you know, whatever, and you kind of have to like explain this weird thing and then get them on board. You have to kind of explain how the sausage is made. But people, I find in these types of public awareness spots, almost everyone we reach out to is really, really amenable to the process, is very interested and very eager to participate. And that was kind of surprising. I thought it would be more difficult. And every time we start a new one of these type of projects, I always think, oh, it's going to be difficult. No one's going to want to work with us. And then it's the exact opposite. So yeah, I think I was surprised professionally to see how much more inclusive we could be and how much more receptive people that we reached out to were to work with us. Past that too, I'm also just always taken back by how, it's just so amazing. A good editor and a good creative team, can just take this pile of footage and a couple really, really intense moments and then cobble together and just make a message that reads. You just like, it's more of a jump, like it's more than the sum of its parts, but to such a degree that it surprises you. And the commercials are of that nature. You put the parts individual, it doesn't add up, and then you put them together in the right order, just like notes in a composer. So the composition, quality, and potential also took me by surprise, and I was really impressed that they can kind of bring these messages forward with literally a handful of images and video that aren't even necessarily interconnected, but it's how they're woven that really does it. So yeah, always pleasantly surprised by how these narratives can come out, and just the workmanship and the good natured of people that you're trying to work with too on these projects, and how motivated they are to participate. It was kind of counter to a lot of commercials, which were a bit of a slog to get this people, and now I'm going to ask this filmmaker to reach out to his friends to see if he can get their permission, and he's not that motivated because it's a commercial for Cisco. So the again, pleasantly professionally surprised that if you're working on the right message, people will want to work with you even more than they would for just some average big tech company or something like that.